Thank you. Look, it's really exciting to be here because I have the pleasure as head of research to do a lot of research and have a lot of conversations with our members in procurement, but even some of our partners as well, to really understand and explore the landscape for digital transformation. So I'll be sharing some of the insights that I've learned today. But I'm also excited because I kind of jokingly called this event the Instagram of digital transformation and procurement, because we're going to be hearing about all these success stories and excitement around, our partners are going to be sharing the tools and tricks that are going to help you get there. We're going to hear about some great solutions that have been put in place to create value for the procurement function, and about the stakeholders who've been really engaged with those things. As Bo mentioned earlier, the reality is that there's lots of pictures that we're not posting on Instagram and a lot of barriers and challenges that we're all facing. So I'd encourage you to just take a look around the room and recognize that, this is a very safe space to be able to talk about those barriers and challenges, which is actually what I'm going to be starting with, those pictures that we don't share on Instagram of procurement digital transformation. And the reason why I'm doing that is because this year we at PL did a survey and did some research with some of our members from our procurement community to understand, and what we really wanted to uncover was what is leading to success, what is driving those 1 in 6, as Bo mentioned, successful projects. And in doing so, we actually uncovered and really got to the bottom of those barriers and challenges. And it's important to recognize those barriers and challenges because overcoming those is actually, therein lies an opportunity for driving success. So what are they? They should all be fairly familiar. Legacy systems and processes. Now, this is the number one challenge and barrier for about 3/4 of our survey cohort. This is really about multiple disparate systems that are currently in place, which are also supported by legacy processes, and they're shackles, really, that are holding us back, partly because of the fact that they're still helping us keep going with our businesses. They're keeping the lights on in our organization, which makes them really difficult to let go of. And then, of course, they're also full of dirty data, which kind of makes me laugh because I have this vision in my head of just muddy data that sits in the background making us all indecisive. But the reality is this is all data that's been built over the years and built in a time when we didn't realize the value and worth that data was going to have. But like I said, these are all, challenges and exciting ones, because solving for legacy processes, systemizing our processes, building ways of creating and building data sets that are clean and are going to be useful in the future. These are opportunities for improving the business and improving operations in and of themselves. Unclear accountability is another common challenge. So the reality is that digitalization is a transformation, not only of systems and tools, but of people, operating models, processes, ways of working. All of those things need to be put under the magnifying glass and need to be revisited and disrupted to be able to move us forward and drive the change that we're wanting to drive. And the reality is that to be able to do that, particularly where those decisions and changes go beyond functional boundaries, needs to have decision makers who can give the green light and give the go-ahead for those big decisions. And being able to get that engagement and endorsement and get those decision makers involved isn't always easy. Which leads me to my next point, because once you have those decision makers giving the green light, you also need the people and the resources to be able to then execute on those decisions. And one of the challenges or barriers that we often come across is inaccurate business cases that are put up front firstly. So I'll be talking in a bit more detail in the next few slides around the value and return on investment of digital transformation projects. And the reality is that, particularly in the earliest stages of digitalization, that value and those return on investments aren't always very clear or apparent upfront. And that's why it's important when building those business cases and developing that stakeholder engagement that you're looking beyond cost efficiencies and looking at other sources of value that are going to be coming from that digital transformation, and use those to engage those stakeholders and get them on board for those reasons. The operational efficiencies will come eventually, but you can't lead with that first and foremost. Otherwise, you'll be setting yourself up for a bit of disappointment. And the last is culture. So traditional cultures who might be resistant to change or comfortable with the current ways of working, these are it's actually the people, not necessarily the technology, that is one of the key barriers. And in making sure really that you have a change management program or approach, whether that's through the communication strategy, all of those cannot be underestimated, and they do require the right resourcing and effort upfront to be able to make sure that happens. Now, I'm not painting a particularly, I sort of probably went overboard with my bad photos on Instagram, and I'm not painting a particularly exciting picture for this challenge. But the reason I'm doing that is because I think it's important to know and to embrace what's out there, because the reality is digital transformation in procurement is inevitable, but it's the Everest of procurement at the moment. It is that big mountain that's in the way that we all are striving to climb and all want to see the view at the top. And today and tomorrow we're going to be hearing what the view at the top looks like, and we're going to be inspired by the benefits that come from this and the reasons why we're going ahead and taking those hard steps to get there. So part of my job at Procurement Leaders, particularly in the advisory space, is to do that, to keep you motivated, to remind you of what the view is at the top, but also to provide some tools to help you along the way. And I'll remind you as well around the benefits of digital transformation, in particular the data and the power that's going to be giving us going forward in the future. There's something like 2.5 quintillion bytes of, I don't even know what a quintillion is, quintillion bytes of data being produced every day, and that's only going to increase. We know that Industry 4.0 is coming, 5G is just going to blow that through the roof. So the amount of data that's going to be available is going to be phenomenal, and we need to keep up with the ability to make sense of that, make use of that, create value from that. Because as a procurement function, insight and market intelligence is part of what we do. We want to know more about our customers, about our own business, about our suppliers, about the market, about the network that we're part of, and being able to piece all that together, pull all of that into a story that we can tell to our business, and use that then for making better decisions. This is the value. This is the view from the top that we're all striving to see. So another way to paint the picture of the summit of the Everest of procurement here is about augmentation. So, I mentioned being able to make better decisions through all of that data, but it's also about augmenting what is humanly possible. What we currently can do as humans is going to be superseded by the technology that is available out there. Now, the reality, though, is that augmentation is further down the track. It's the summit, but there are those couple of steps in between that need to happen. So based on the survey results, only about 35% of our survey respondents are actually in that starting to be in that augmentation space, using AI, using blockchain, having automated or have bots within their systems to be able to make intelligent decisions. So there is a small minority who are in that space, and the reality is that most of our procurement members are either still digitizing or automating some of those transactional tasks and reviewing their P2P process. And it is perhaps not as sexy as the augmentation, as some of the solutions that are available out there, but it is necessary. It is a key fundamental part of making sure that we're building the right data sets, that we're incorporating the right processes, and not only that, but it allows for the people part that I mentioned earlier to catch up, because it is the people part, the transformation of the operating models, of the talent, of the people that are going to continue to use all of those systems. It needs to happen simultaneously, and unfortunately that is the part that takes a bit longer. So again, there is a maturity curve to digital transformation. So on the left here, you have digitization, and on the right, you have innovation. And naturally, the return on investment that is going to result from the right-hand side is going to be much higher. And that's certainly what we saw with our survey respondents, where innovative and, again, greater than humanly possible solutions were the ones that were starting to see those cost benefits come through, much more so than on the left-hand side. And that's not, it's a bit of a no-brainer, right? Because if you have digitization and automation, which are essentially replicating existing processes and ways of working, you're not ending up with anything new. So there isn't any new value to be had with that. It's when you start looking at bigger data sets at higher speeds, being able to spot innovation, spot trends faster than any human could, this is where that new value and additional value is going to come from. So intuitively, it makes sense for that to be the case. The other important points, this was the stepping stones along the way, is to make sure that you're bringing your stakeholders and end users on the journey with you. So, I mean, Bo talked a bit about, UX and making sure that we incorporate our users from that perspective. But the reality is that bringing them on the journey as adopters for all of this and as advocates for the solution is equally important. And making sure that the solutions that are put in place are meeting broader objectives than just those of procurement. And then secondly, it's also about making sure that you bring your network in with you as well. And there's the major blocker that we see at that point is a lack of willingness to share. Now, I challenge you all today to think about how we can push past this, because it is a huge blocker at the moment. And the reality is that it's a blocker that will need to be addressed because, with the outcome of Industry 4.0 and the reality that the power of data is only really going to come at the fore through the network of data talking to each other, without being able to actually share and enter this network, it's going to be a huge blocker going forward. So that's your challenge for today, is to think about how we can create more trust and push past that. So, as I said, we did want to focus not only on the blockers, but also what are the sort of key steps. I don't have 10, but we have, I think, 5 steps. And these are steps that consistently come up, not only in terms of digital transformation, but even transformation more broadly, more generally. And they're important to keep in mind at any stage of the journey, whether you're still at digitization or even while you're still while you're exploring augmentation as well. So first and foremost, and we've covered some of these slightly in the discussion around the barriers, but making sure that you're clear on what problems you're trying to solve for, and engage your stakeholders up front and get those decision makers on board. Consistently also report back to them, share with them what's happening, where are the wins, and yes, perhaps where some of the unfinished scaffolding that Steve mentioned earlier is perhaps reached a standstill, and you need to get that encouragement to keep going. But making sure that you're getting that endorsement and the go-ahead. One CPO I spoke to, he actually spent 12 months, so the first 12 months of his digital transformation strategy was spent just talking, going around the business and engaging and telling everyone what the big dream was and what the plans were. Didn't actually achieve anything in those 12 months apart from a green light. But that green light was the single most important attributor to success for the following years. So don't underestimate that important first step. And do so with clear business case. So again, not leading with those cost efficiencies, but leading with how it's going to improve the user experience. How are you going to be able to make better decisions? Where those decisions are going to be influencing and how they're going to be used. Really lead with those non-cost value drivers. And then making sure that those shackles of systems and processes aren't getting in your way. And that's really about being bold and being comfortable with letting that go. And you know, having a good leader who provides that comfort and that culture is really key. But again, encouraging the team to constantly question and challenge themselves, disrupt themselves, to put it in Steve's words earlier. And we actually, today and tomorrow, my colleague Alex Johnston will be running through the digital readiness assessment. And that is actually a tool that we have to support you at this stage in terms of being able to identify where you're ready and where you're not, and where you need to be addressing those blockers firsthand. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. I've talked about this a bit already in terms of driving value beyond savings. So making sure that when you're putting forward those business cases that you're really looking at what other value that you can drive for the business. We talked a bit about agile delivery as well, and making sure that although your overarching 10-year, so it might be 2030, Steve, not 2020, the 2030 strategy can be big and bold and should be, right? It should be conscious of the fact that this technology is only increasing, that we're really not going to be in the kind of operating space that we are in now. So being bold with that and embracing that, but also be realistic in terms of project by project, taking incremental steps and tackling projects at small scale, and making sure, like I said earlier, that you're taking your stakeholders with you and your users, and making sure that they're involved in that. So when you're putting forward your pilot, it shouldn't be at 100%, maybe 70%. And you get the feedback, and you know you show them perhaps the coding and that's at the background, and it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. And you get their feedback, and you iterate, and you improve, and you keep building. Because as Steve's point earlier with the scaffolding, you have to keep building and you have to keep going, and it's okay if they kind of see that process happening in the background. And then lastly, recognizing this is a continuous journey. It's a 10-year journey. It's not a maybe a couple of the journeys in between could be 6 months journeys, but it is a long journey. And you have to have the right people and the right culture and the mindset that is prepared for that and willing to keep going, and leading with that in mind is really key. So hopefully that's keeping you focused on the top of the mountain, and also recognize that not all teams are going to be in the same position. Some of you are at base camp, some of you are not quite there yet, some of it a bit further advanced, but it's a great opportunity today to share your stories, share your challenges and how you overcome them, and perhaps encourage each other as well, to keep going and to keep climbing. Thank you.